Hello,
Hi.
and welcome to another edition of Story World Explorer, where we are exploring the story of Story and Horse.
So this is a kind of, not a deviation, but we're talking about a business story world. Story and Horse, founded by Hilary Adams, is all about, well, life coaching with a horse, but to really feel connected again back down to nature and to feel rooted in the ground. This conversation really was about that feeling of being de-stressed and experiencing nature again, to get away from modern life and exactly what type of content that allows you to do.
And it was a great conversation. We came up with a lot of cool, interesting pieces of content that you can do, and we're excited about it.
Yeah.
But it's all about getting grounded in this, back into the animal kingdom. We like to think of ourselves as not animals, but we're very connected to animals, and they are very connected to us. And a lot of times, if you get too far into your head, you got to get brought back down and ground yourself. And nature and horses are a great way to do it, as Hilary will tell you.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So it was all about experience. All the content was all around experiencing that feeling in this hustle and bustle world. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it's coming right up. Or if you want to listen to it, it's available on multiple different audio platforms. Either way, enjoy the show.
Enjoy.
All right. Well, welcome back to Story World Explorers. Today we have a fantastic story world that we are descending down from our, what are we calling our ship? It's like a blimp with like an old...
the Story World Explorer.
It's the Story World Explorer ship. And we're descending down into a very interesting story world because it's not an entertainment story world. It's the first deviation from that. We've had four that were definitely story worlds that were entertainment focused. One, of course, with Houston Howard, who was just talking about transmedia at a very educational level. And this is all about Story and Horse. We're here with Hilary Adams. Hilary, we usually get started with you giving us a little information about this project, this business that we're going to be exploring today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. So Story and Horse is a life coaching business that provides out-of-the-box creative experiences for healing, transformation, and education for people who are looking for something a little bit different, a little unique, and not your cookie cutter form of coaching. So that's what I have been doing. And I recently graduated as an equine gestalt coach, which adds horses as co-coaching partners. So that's something that will be added to the business very soon.
Yeah. So what was really interesting when we got to meet you, and I am blanking on how that happened. I think, was it just a LinkedIn introduction? Did we just kind of, somebody commented on something and then I was like, oh, well, let's actually talk. I think that's the way that went. But when we were talking about just horses as a life coaching partner, right? I mean, that's really interesting. I would love for you. We had some great podcast conversations about the ability of the horse to almost mirror the feelings of a human, to make them feel more connected. That entire history that we have with horses. I mean, we used them to plow fields till the ox came around, I guess. I don't know. That's just kind of like stereotypical field plowing. But, to pull carriages, to go into war, to, now recreationally using horses. And that's a connection. You can almost put that up as a co-evolutionary partner with humans, not to the point where it's changed the way that we look or, act or anything, DNA wise.
Mated with them.
No, but what about there's the whole gut ringworm thing that helps us get over allergies and stuff, not ringworm itself, but it's a parasite. Anyways, we've co-evolved with parasites and stuff as well that are very important, the microbes that help break down our food and stuff, but this is a little less extreme of that. But we did kind of, civilization owes a lot to horses. So go into that. I would love, let's start there. Let's start from the horse, and then we'll get into the life coaching and the important part of it.
Yeah, sure. Well, this is the important part. So, so horses they did evolve with us. We domesticated them somewhere between 2,500 and even 5,000 years ago ish. Every time there's new scientific research that sort of moves those numbers around, but they've been with us for a very, very long time. And they have, as you said, been in wars with us. They've plowed the fields for us. They've been our partners with us. They've worked the range with us. So there is some exciting new research that's happening in terms of watching. They can see that horses recognize faces for people, but they also can recognize facial expressions. So they can recognize whether we're looking happy, sad, which makes sense because we're predator, they're prey, right? So they've learned to read us very well. They've learned to communicate with us extremely well. And there is a whole lot of new research now, as I said, that's looking at things like the oxytocin. When humans are looking at gazing at dogs, for example, pet dogs, and pet dogs are gazing at humans, they're now seeing that the oxytocin, which is that feel-good hormone, neurotransmitter that we talk about for social bonding, for trust, that increases, that there is a positive benefit for both. And they are thinking the same thing happens with horses and other domesticated animals that also seem to enjoy that social bond with us. Horses also have mirror neurons, just like we do, which are the neurons in our brain that enable us to understand and empathize with somebody else. So like I can understand and I can get entrained with what you all are doing because we have these neurons that mirror each other. Thus we get in sync with each other. And so there's a whole field of research that's just starting to look at what actually is happening biologically inside of the human and inside of the equine when we're in these social bonds together, when we're establishing trust, when we're doing what's called equine assisted interventions, which is part of the animal assisted intervention sort of umbrella. And that's any kind of coaching, therapy, educational opportunity, therapeutic writing. There's sort of this big umbrella of things that sort of benefit the human, right, when we're working with horses. And now they're starting to look at also, well, what is the benefit to the equines? Is there a benefit there as well? And I would say working with them, as long as it's done in a positive, enriching way with the horses in mind, as well as the humans, that, yeah, it is very beneficial. So amazing things happen. Anecdotally, there's tons of research for, tons of reports, even from the cowboys way back when, right? That the horses listen, that the horses are non-judgmental, that horses have been known to do things like comfort, and people say that they heal and they feel better just being around a horse and all of these kind of things. But we're starting to actually have the research to back up what's going on there. Horses we know that our heart rates slow down when we're with horses. We know that we've seen people with PTSD doing groundwork with horses who are calm, who are trained in this, that they can drop out of panic attacks simply being around the horse. So there's all sorts of that kind of benefit for being with them, not to mention just enjoying time. If people are interested, I do want to give a shout out to the Human Animal Bond Research Institute.org, which is HABRI. I don't know how they pronounce it, but it's HABRI.org. And they've been around, they're just celebrating their 10-year anniversary. And you can find tons of research, not only about horses, but about pets. So the pets that we all interact with and all the mental health benefits of being with them and living a life with animals. So HABRI is a great resource.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it even comes down to like exactly what you casually mentioned, the particular horse that has to be trained in this. This isn't one of those things you can just go up to one of those horses that are in the rodeo that are bucking people off. I don't know if they're in the right headspace to help out. So it's this world, right? Just taking it back to story and horse and to what the work that you're trying to do and trying to apply this storytelling aspect. And I feel like this is a really good first introduction into, transmedia as used in a business format outside of entertainment, because dear God, it is the toughest thing. And we've expressed this to you, to get anybody to start to think about how, if you're able to get a great story and you're able to get people engaged, how that results in revenue. I don't understand where the disconnect is between those two things. Maybe it's the length of time sometimes it takes. But it's always far more genuine when you get somebody be like, yeah, you know what, I want to participate in this. Or once again, just like what you said with that shout out to that company that has all this research and stuff. It's like, that's the first step, and to be able to even understand, or even to, if somebody's looking for a life coach, and to understand what the difference between your approach and somebody else's approach. You said cookie cutter. We have run into a gajillion life coaches over a course of networking during COVID. Like, everybody's a life coach, and they're all focusing on different stuff. And, and it comes down to, especially to differentiate yourself, and this goes for any business in any industry, is, are you going to be able to engage with your audience in an authentic way? Or are you going to be able to make stuff that they're going to want to engage with in the first place? Are you going to be able to pique their interest and keep them continually coming back to the point where maybe one day they can buy the product, maybe not, but maybe they know somebody that could use it, and that's that whole word of mouth that we've said it a million times on this and the previous version of this podcast in conversation, that word of mouth is the best advertising that you could ever find and anybody could ever have. That is the goal. So let's talk about this, because Story and Horse, the store world is surrounding this history of the horse and the human, and this bond between the two. And every other story, I feel like, and Jackie can chime in too, where any story here that comes out of this, it has to do with that bond. Mm-hmm. Is there? Yeah.
And right, it's like, it comes back down. And we were talking about this on the Iron Leech podcast too, where it's a strange place that we're in right now. And even back then, it's like there's always this drive for technology and getting further away. And I think I was even on Yoga on the Beach on Saturday, and I was talking to one of the people there, and I was talking about, it's like, this stuff, just being grounded and connected, and just having a lazy Saturday is so foreign to everybody. It's like, and he was talking about how it's like, yeah, we have to remind ourselves that we're still animals. And it's like this, it's like, how can we get rooted in the earth, rooted in reality, the reality of our bodies, and the reality of this connection to nature, when we are so far removed from it. And it's almost like not narcissism or arrogance. It's like, oh, but what? That's the animal kingdom, not the human civilization. And it's like, well, we grew up with it's like we're old friends that we're like, yeah, we no longer talk to them. But it's like, we grew up with these things. We became what we are with animals and with nature. And of course, we're hardwired by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to be around these things, to be within these things. And we've only had, industrialization for the past 150 years, 200 years. No, less than 200 years. 150, 120
well, you
years,
remember George Washington microwaving a burrito before he crossed the Delaware.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
He had a burrito. Microwaving a burrito.
Right, with solar panels, because they didn't have anywhere to connect it to. Right, so it's very, I think it's like, any story that, and that's the reason, like, you were talking about, what was the love hormone that...
Oxytocin.
Oxytocin. I was just yesterday, I was watching Nova, and I just mentioned this to Frank.
You did.
And I was saying that, like, dogs are basically run on just that. It's like, that's basically the only thing they have. So that's why dogs can have a friend that's a duck that not really a lot of animals can do, So, because it's like, it's a different species. I should kill this duck. And the dog's like, well, he's my friend, I'll be a friend with a duck. Even they give dogs to cheetahs too, because cheetahs are a little bit like nervous. So they give cheetahs have therapy dogs. The dog's just like, hey, you're my friend. So it's, so like, it's what, and then, there's that whole little kid story about a little kid explaining why dogs don't have to live as long, because they already figured out the meaning of life. Because they're just have fun and they love people and that's all they do. So they only have to live 8 years, because literally that's basically all life's worth.
Right, trying to learn that. But
so that connection that I think is really important, is anything that can get us to ground ourselves in nature can actually help us succeed in the world that is disconnected from nature, because we always have to get reset and come back to center.
I agree. Like, one of the reasons people ask me why story and horse, and there's two layers to that. The first is I love stories and I love horses. So, and those have been lifelong centering components of mine. My mom wrote, and so I grew up with like the sound of the typewriter. I grew up with, stories, and they're sort of in my blood, and I think they're in all our DNA. I think they're some of our oldest currency is stories and horses, because I love horses and I grew up with them. But the other layer of that is exactly what you're saying. To me, story is our embodied form, this physical form. It's how we get ourselves here, and how we make our way through our life is through story. We tell ourselves stories inside our head. We tell stories to each other. We are meaning-making creatures. And so we are making meaning all the time out of everything. We're constructing. That's why when people tell me they're not creative, I'm like, everyone is creative. Life is a creative art form, and we are always in creative process. And so stories for me are that embodied form of, we are the embodied form of story, and we are living our world that way. And then horse is the spirit side, and I'm using that in the biggest generalist way, however works for each person. But horses are that mystery, that energy, that spiritual side that we are also part of. There are a lot of things that we do not know. We're just starting to learn about consciousness. Most of our universe is dark matter and dark energy, and we don't know what the heck that is. So we are living constantly in mystery and constantly in this ephemeral world also. And to me, horses and other animals, as you were talking about, have and kind of carry that with them all the time. They're more in that environment, in that way of being. And so for us, we have to live as humans at the intersection of story and horse. We have to live in the intersection of our embodied form with our spirit side, with that other mystery. And we have to live in that all the time. And what you were saying is that a lot of times we swing, our balance swings. So we lose connection with our other parts of ourselves. So we lose connection with that spirit side, or we get too much into our stories and into our heads, and we forget about the mystery, because we always live in paradox of what we know and what we don't know, of what is now and what we're imagining was and what we're imagining to be, because the only thing that really is now. Everything else is made up. Everything else is story. And so that to me is exactly story and horse. That to me is what story and horse means, is us living in this centered intersection of the embodied form and the spirit, and bringing that to life. And the life coaching that I do is about healing that and bringing that back together, the reunification of that wholeness in a person, so that they can then both solve, the logistical things, right? Your daily schedule and everything else, what you do as life coach, you help figure that out, and also help support and encourage and develop this other side, however that's expressed for the individual. And often the creative part ends up going into the flow, into one side, and kind of gets left out of the other side, because you can dance, you can sing your weekly schedule, you can watercolor your weekly schedule and then put it back down into your task organizer online. You can do both. The things can live together. So as I was saying in one of our conversations before this, I was saying, we could all use to be a little more horse. We could all use usually to be a little more into that animal form, because you were saying there's a hubris where we're like, we're humans, we're separate, we're somehow different. We can't heal ourselves with being separate. We can't heal without our fellow animals. We can't heal without that connection, and they can help us return to that critical component of who we are and remember that critical component and our strengths and our power and our wisdom and our intelligence that we innately have inside of ourselves, that we often forget and don't get a chance to expose and show to the world, because that's where things get a little bit different, right? That's when I say people are a little out of the box. A lot of times it's because they're kind of more in that form, and trying to get that form into the physical world, into the story, is where people get, oh, well, that person's different, or that person's really strange. Well, it's usually, again, because it's just about finding that balance and finding about how to intersect effectively.
Sure. Yeah, and just going back a little bit, Jack mentioned Yoga on the Beach, so I wanted to give them a quick shout out because
Yeah.
Yoga on the Beach is here in Chicago. It's run by a good friend of ours, Jonathan V. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I do not like. I'm picturing your name in my head, and I'm not going to butcher it here, and I don't think Jack knows how to pronounce it either. But really, what Jack's talking about, I think that is at. And what you just explained, Hilary, is where that core message of what this story world could really be, and it's finding that middle ground between, okay, yes, of course, everybody has stuff they have to do, right? Everybody's got to eat, everybody's got to go to work, and except for a few people that have way too much money, right? But like everybody has to do those things. There are daily tasks of life that are modern life. There you go. I was going to say human life, modern life. That is very true for everybody. But there is also this other side, the spiritual side that you alluded to, that is very much like the only way that you could really reset. Like every time that you hear of somebody that feels like they're burnt out, right? It's like they're burnt out. Would that be solved by watching Netflix on the couch? Maybe a little bit, but would it be a lot better if you spent a day with a horse?
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot of it, right? And I wanted to compliment too, just as we keep on talking, how brilliant the name Story Horse is, because it allows for you to, yes, be focused on the life coaching and be focused on the horse being a huge part of that life coaching, and then being able to combine the natural world to the modern day struggles and being able to blend that and find that equilibrium of life. But on top of that too, and I have an idea that I'll save for the transmedia portion of this conversation, when we start talking about content styles, but it also allows you to be the epicenter of this information, of organizing things to allow people to experience it, which is just another revenue stream for Story and Horse to be able to put on. It's a revenue stream, and it's a lead generator. It's so fantastic. It's like the absolute perfect thing that you want to have happen. If your lead generation is also making you money, it's perfect. But it allows you to venture into so many different mediums, right? Story and horse. So it could be like we were mentioning before, like what came to my mind, because you do have a theater background and in theater directing. That it just lends itself to cross these different mediums to show this to multiple or a larger audience that's looking for it, rather than you just sitting there banging your head against the table going like, I need to find a new client today because I just need to find one, and I feel like I'm strong. I got to go networking events. I got to say how great a horse is. When in reality, what you could be doing is enjoying that ride by creating all this type of content, by expanding this world and inviting people into it. That hopefully down the line is going to result in larger revenue streams from a variety of different places. So I think it's a perfect name because it's not horse life coaching or equestrian life coaching or something like that. It allows you to be very malleable. And if somebody finds out that you're doing an event for Story and Horse and then finds out after that event that you do life coaching or vice versa, it's not going to be a shock. It's not going to be like, oh, well, I thought you just did life coaching. Why are you throwing an event? That sounds like you're just trying to take money and then get me into lead gen, which, it's not that. But allows you to kind of ebb and flow between that, and so yeah, so I definitely wanted to comment on that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Sure. Before we go any further, I also want to say it's like we kind of touched on the whole idea of being burnt out, and I think one of the things too, it's like there's only so much I think that the consciousness, that the mind can do without, it's like we have our, you have to be in balance with it. And while your brain and your thoughts can be very much like in this world, I mean, it created the modern human world, so it can interact with all these things. But being burnt out, it's like it's like the body needs to be nourished, it needs to be connected to where it came from, and that only helps the mind then tackle those other things again. So it's like you need that stuff to actually succeed. So we're not saying that modern life is terrible. You should only live with horses. You shouldn't have clothes on. No one's saying that. And it's not never watch Netflix again, because, as we're going to get into, that's
you better watch our show.
Right. You better watch the Story and Horse program. Otherwise,
yes.
Otherwise,
right.
Well, yeah.
Right.
And modern life, it's really interesting because it's such a blessing, right? It's one of those swords, right? We always say there's like, it's more about learning. We're in this really interesting, I think, period right now where we've got all this, all these benefits of modern life, especially if we're lucky enough to be in a place that's safe, that's where we have our basic needs met, where we're not in threat, all of those things. Then you can start to look at in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You can start to look at self-improvement and transformation, and how can I become the most expressive, wonderful version of myself that I can be? And that wasn't something that we always could ask. We didn't, as humans, always have the luxury. And there are many people still today who do not have the luxury of the time, space, energy, et cetera, to be able to even ask sort of those longer questions, those bigger questions. So it's really a blessing. It's really a thing I'm so grateful for. If somebody comes to me and says they can't figure out their life schedule, I know already that despite all of the challenges and not making light of any of their pain or suffering, they have already solved an extraordinary number of things to be able to be in a place where they can start asking those questions. And when you come to a place where you can say, you know what, I'm burned out and I can take even 2 hours with a horse. Now, if you're allergic to horses, we can do it virtually. If you're scared of horses, we can do it over a fence. You don't have to be right up close to them. There are mini horses, which are smaller and they're less scary. So even taking 2 hours to have that kind of connection, whether it's grooming them, getting a chance to touch them, getting a chance to just look at them, as I was talking about the studies that are happening where we get benefits even just by simply being able to be with or near them, nearby them. So even just taking that time really does reset your mind. And I've had clients tell me that, and clients who are not necessarily horse people, they tend to be animal people because otherwise Story and Horse may not appeal, the name itself, but they're like, oh, that's interesting. I wasn't ever really with a horse before. And I come out of the barn, I come out of that area, and suddenly I just feel refreshed. I feel like there's been like a burden lifted. And, in many ways, the horses do that simply by their presence, simply by them being horses, by being large animals, mammals, by sort of being around us. But they really also do, especially the horses that we're talking about who are sort of geared toward this kind of work. They have to like people. They have to have good ground manners. They don't actually require any special training other than some safety and some teaching of boundaries and things like that. But there are horses who really love this work because they have a natural inclination, just like certain cats or dogs do, to really, the therapy cats or dogs, they go and they sit with pain, and they can sit in with somebody who's in pain or with somebody who needs some comforting and things. And they seem to be able to empathize. They see, and I'm using a word that hasn't been proven by science, but anybody who's seen this happen, they certainly seem to be understanding the needs of the people, and they very generously are there with us, and they're very, very generously are willing to walk up to us and be there with us. And hopefully they're also receiving some benefit in exchange. So yeah, I think it's a really beautiful relationship, these animals who come with us to help us heal, who come with us to hear our stories, who sit with us around the campfires. That's the other thing. I really think that horses and dogs and other domesticated animals that have sat with us around campfires for so long, for thousands of years in various forms, I think they were listening to us in some way, in their way. I think they were hearing our stories. And I think that there is an understanding there that maybe, again, like dark energy or dark matter, right? It's something that we don't know yet, but we're just starting to explore. to stop being quite so arrogant from our human perspective, that there's only one form of intelligence, that there's only our form of understanding the world. Yeah, it's a really.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'm also struck with the very core of any story world, be it an entertainment or a business one, is to offer an escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's to find community with people that like something that you like, right? And being able to share ideas about things that that are similar with each other, right? And in this case, right, obviously that could be very entertainment. It could be very much, I want to get lost. I want to escape my reality to something else. But in this case, it's very much more of a, I'm going to escape to become refreshed and then I'm going to come back, right? Mm-hmm. And then how do I even merge those two worlds together? And I think that that's really important to always remember too about any transmedia project. Once again, if it's an entertainment one or if it's a business orientated one or a social impact transmedia story world that's just trying to change the world for the better, that it is all about community. It's all about community building. And one of the ideas or one of the things that we spoke about, right, when we were talking, when you had brought this up, you were saying that one thing you would love to have is kind of that hub, that website hub that everybody could kind of come back to, and they could talk and they could, share this and information and all this other stuff, very blog forward, but also just a very community building forward type thing. And I think that's an excellent place to start to transition into talking about the actual content that we could talk about, to actually invite people into the store world, right? For the store world that we're working on, that we've mentioned a couple of times, that's like the catalyst. That's the pinpoint, is having that website where people can go to get information, that people can go to interact with each other, that people can go and feel like they belong, right? And that when they feel like they need that escape, right? It's there and it's accessible. And they know that there are other people there that are also escaping. And so when we were speaking on the just Story and Horse, and about how the escape is to really, get back grounded into the world, right? Get back grounded and feel like, you're one with nature again, or anything else. My mind starts to go, and just going off of what Jonathan is trying to do too with some of the retreats he's doing, because he's doing a retreat that's going to go out to the Puerto Rican jungle, and they're just going to be doing yoga, and it's going to be a food cleanse as well as a spiritual cleanse. So I don't know, it's all just going to be like a 98% vegan diet or something like that, and whatever. We're going because we, that sounds like that's definitely something that would be great to do. But that's all what Jonathan, that's where he's really focused. But then that made my mind think about the same type of thing for Story and Horse, where it could be very much a retreat where, what you could do is combine with, say, somebody like Jonathan, or somebody like a nutritionist, or a botanist, or whatever, that you guys could go out and actually perform. And that's what I was kind of alluding to with the revenue generator alongside a lead generator, right? Because you would have to charge people to go and do that. They'd have this amazing experience. You could continue to perpetuate this story about what Story and Horse is standing for, which is combining, right? Like you could do like a workshop about like day-to-day life, and then go back to the horses, and being able to combine those two worlds and kind of show the practice in reality, in real life, where people can actually go and experience it for, I don't know, like a 5-day extensive excursion. And then go back and being able to tell those stories, right? I mean, it's all about just this constant, that's an example of real life content, right? Where their people are going to actually experience, but then it translates into stories, blogs, like it could go into, a quick mini documentary series on that particular one, right? Obviously that's a little bit further off into the future, but it could be, it could just expand it out to be able to do multiple, maybe like 4 times a year or something like that, that can then end up resulting in more people doing the life coaching, more people watching those, hey, what was their experience when they did this intensive,
and then, also there are, I think, probably hundreds and hundreds of stories about like creative stories that are about the horse's effect. You know, you could really expand this world into that fiction world, because as long as it all centers around this whole thing of get back to nature, center, and then reestablish or re-enter the modern human world. I think that is a theme that, I mean, even in the retreats, that would be the theme. It's come here, get grounded, and then attack your world on stable ground, you know?
Yeah, right. Because it's that flow, right? Because you can implement a lot of life coaching stuff into it alongside of the being able to feel grounded, right? Not overwhelmed by it. Not like you feel like you're doing work.
Right. And then, you know, as we were talking with Houston Howard, if you have a short story, if you have a novel that you've written about this type of stuff, that is IP, that is market awareness, so that you can then go and say, hey, you know what? We have this series idea based on this world. It's not going to be just not just optioning the book.
Right.
And creating this. No, it's going to be a different story, but it's going to be around this theme. And that's going to, then that expands your reach, and you might be able to do 52 retreats in a year after that.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
You might not be able, you might have to hire a couple of people to help you do it all.
Yeah, but I feel like really, like, especially with story and horse and how important it is to get in front of the horse and and even just to get grounded again. That first type of, and it's going to be tough, Hilary. I'm not going to say it's going to be like, oh yeah, just go call up some people and set up a retreat, right? But like, to find and to get that first like real life experience, so then you can have those people be in classic business talk, that's called, not a deposition. That's classic lawyer talk.
Well, I don't want to be a part of any Frank's businesses.
Not
if all of them have to do depositions.
Well, the customers all had to give their depositions. The CEO's going away for a long time. Not depositions. What is it? What is it called? It's not. It's like a review. What would that be called? A testimonial. There you go. Testimonial. Thank you, Jack. A testimonial.
Deposition.
A testimonial. Those would be in classic business talk. That's a testimonial. But in this transmedia, that's just more amazing content that can then be expanded, extrapolated into, once again, fictional stories or non-fictional stories. You can do both.
And
you have the talent to do both too, which is what's so exciting about it, right? So it's not like you're sitting there going like, oh, well, I'm going to stick with the non-fiction stuff. You can really start to explore short stories on that, based on the testimonials of what actually happened.
Right. They can all, the best stories are the ones that mimic reality, or reality mimics the best stories. I don't know which way that necessarily goes, but that's where Frank was saying that, maybe the series is a little bit further down the line, and obviously it is, and it's important to get people in front of the horse at first, but it's like, once you get this ecosystem going, the series is the advertisement. It's the get people into like, oh wow, you know what? Now, I look at this, who's doing this, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, they do these retreats, and it's like, oh shit, I want to do this because so and so in the series had this fucking eureka moment, And I want to experience that too. And look at that. There's 52 of them a year. So I could do one,
Right, exactly.
And so that's the kind of thing that that's the beauty about blending this creative work into the business, is that it will start to, you'll be having fun doing everything.
Right.
And you won't be that person that annoys people before their YouTube videos.
Yeah, I love the idea of retreats. There are people who do it with the horses in various ways, but I like the idea of doing it with other types of healing modalities also, because I feel like then it's really, like you were using the word escape. I think of it as sort of a journey. And I think that we are designed to go on journeys. And I think that sort of when you cross those thresholds, that's when you can have the really profound impact moments, and those aha moments, because you are removed from the daily, everyday thing. So you step out of the everyday thing, you open that door, you cross that threshold, you go on that retreat, you take them back over the threshold into their everyday with the takeaways that they can then apply into their everyday experiences. And it's really important, I think, to go on those journeys because we really are, I think we are designed for those. I have a suspicion that that's why people get sucked into, and like you, I'm like, go for Netflix. There's some amazing content being generated out there and all of these streaming platforms. So go for it. I think one of the reasons that we jump into this so readily is because we are designed to go on those journeys. Again, like story is in our DNA. And if we get to go on a fictional journey for a little while, it gives our mind a break from our own fiction, right? So we're always in fiction. We're just switching fiction. So we're switching to somebody else's fiction. It's a whole lot nicer to be in somebody else's fiction because we can sort of take our hands off the steering wheel a little bit more, right? We can sort of relax a little bit knowing that we can go on that journey. And that happens in retreats because in some ways you are very much steering it, but in other ways you really are in a safe environment where you're sort of almost in a different fiction. You're in, the rules are a little bit different. It's like if you go to a city that you've never been in before and you find yourself, talking to strangers more or doing things you never would dare to do in your everyday life, you take these risks, these good risks and have fun and stuff. And it's because you've switched your narrative out. And, we get really stuck in fixed narrative. We get stuck in our fixed stories every single day. And so if we can break those stories up a little bit, if we can get them bendy again, so there's some flexibility in there, which is what happens when you go on retreats, which is when you shift these narratives to yourself, then when you come back out into your everyday world, then suddenly you're kind of looking at it from a different perspective because you literally have shifted your narrative. So I think it's an incredibly important thing. And thank you for the idea because I love the idea. I mean, I love as a theater director, you create worlds, you create immersive experiences for people to enter into, go through transformative experiences through fictional narrative and come out the other side changed and continue those ripples of those change. And so this is the same type of thing. I love creating experiential adventures for people, experiential places for people to go and explore and sort of do their own choose your own adventure inside, but it's a safe space. So they have all these different options and things and ways they can experience it, but they're taken care of the whole time. And I'm really good at designing those because I've done that for a really, really long time. And and adding horses and other animals into that mix, I think just further catalyzes the possibilities inside of those experiences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, everything you said there you're exactly right because it really does allow you to break that mold. And once again, I mean, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for, something to break out of, whether that's if you go home and you play, Call of Duty, whatever, and you're just killing people online, right? You're playing with your friends and stuff. That's to break away from the real world. It's to engage in a fictional narrative that, you're in 2042, I guess this is the next one that's coming out. That might be a different one, but it's to break out of that narrative. And one of the things that I absolutely love about transmedia, and it's really a crucial part of the entire idea of this narrative structure of the collective journey, is getting it into real life, right? Now, what we're kind of suggesting, we're playing around with, it's like maybe the real life stuff could come first. Regardless as to the way that it actually develops, I still think that's probably the best way. But if at one point, right, we joked around with you because you're like, I don't want to direct theater. That's not, I'm not going to go back to that. I'm like, hell, if you get a meeting with Netflix and they're like, wait a minute, you've been direct. Oh, that would be, who else should direct this? Obviously, and then they'll suck you right back up into it. And then you'll start directing series. And like I said, you can't escape it. It'll always come back and find you in one way or the other. But like if, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a brief second because I started talking about Netflix and everything. Oh, but obviously with the series, the reach that Netflix has to a much wider audience, what will end up happening is in the reverse, right? Is that somebody will watch and they'll finish the season. And this is the worst part. And we've talked to you about this as well, is that once you're done with a season of a series or anything, you're just like, I don't want to watch anything else. I want to go back. Right. And at the end of it, they could be a call of action. Like, if you want to experience this, well, here's the invite. Here's the calendar. Like we're doing it from this day to this day, costs as much. And if you're able to get like 5% of the people that watch it to go like, yes, I mean, that's a huge chunk of people. It might be a little less than 5%. Because if you get 5%, you might have to, it might end up becoming an enterprise.
Yeah, you have to expand.
Yeah, right. But like it can work in that opposite way as well, where, once again, I mean, for all these entertainment and distribution channels, let's get rid of the entertainment distribution channels in general. The big thing that they're looking for is that pre-market awareness, and what we're suggesting, what you're going to be able to do through these, like, the testimonial type of stuff, and then the actual real life retreats, whether that's once a year to start off, just to kind of get some footing underneath and see where the interest lies, experiment with different partners and stuff, which would be a lot of fun.
And and then obviously an easy one to start is the podcast, to kind of keep those people in the loop. You always want something for someone to interact with.
Yeah, a long form type thing. Like whether that's a blog or a podcast.
Right. Yeah, right. It's like, you could be, and like I think we discussed on the pre-podcast how many different things you could talk about to get people primed for the other things that you're talking about. The science, the research. You could actually talk to equestrian people that are like, oh yeah, this is actually true. This is what actually happens. This is why we're so well connected. And that just helps legitimize what you're saying and the stories that you're building on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much potential. Like as your mind starts to roll, it's almost like, how could that not happen? Because that's really is one of those things that, like, it really does have that type of potential. And it's like, to begin off, like starting off, and, like I said, you just got your equestrian license to do this type of work and everything. And after you get those first few, clients underneath your belt, feedback and everything, you could start to really, I mean, a big part of this too is going to be the market research, and to figure out, like, okay, what are people actually looking for? And is this something that they would want? I mean, we're just hypothesizing at the moment, but I feel like that would work in one shape or another, simply because of our experiences as well with something, not, once again, yoga is not life coaching with horses, but the goal is still the same. I feel like the goal is still the same.
The goal is to ground you, and
right?
Re-energize your mind and body and spirit.
And there are people who are doing yoga with like horses nearby and stuff, just like the goat yoga. Right. But there are people who are doing it with the horses outside of the pen, and so you're separated, obviously. So there are people who are doing those kind of blends, and I think it's very healing. To have those experiences.
Like, you ride the horses to the top of a hill. The horses go like over to the side, and you do yoga, and then you ride them back, and then you groom them after. That's like, oh wow, that's a great day.
Right.
That's a very odd. Not odd reset. Odd only because it's like the exact opposite of what most people think of. When you talk about human life today. But I mean, that's just so simple and like tactile and like, wow.
And you get to stretch before and after you ride, which will be helpful. So that's
yeah, right. There you go. Exactly.
Right. It just surrounded by nature. I was just thinking, I mean, one thing that would definitely probably interest Jack and me would be if it was a cowboy themed. You're up on the trail and you're going underneath the stars and stuff, and everybody's got chewing tobacco.
It's really
probably
funny
not using it because that's gross.
It's really funny that you say that, because I have a friend who, in fact, now 3 people who have said to me they want me to run a cowboy retreat where male identifying people of any kind wish to come and be cowboys. So you get to like hang out and tell stories around the campfire and all that kind of stuff. So that may happen, because I've been asked now. It's funny you bring that up. I've been asked multiple times by people who said, we really want to be cowboys for a weekend. Get into those myths, right?
Right. Yeah, and you could partner up with a ranch that might have cattle that need to be moved or something, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch. It could be once again, it's like that yoga thing, but only the practical part is that, like, oh man, we're out here, we're working, right? Obviously, everyone puts their phones in a bag and it stays wherever you started, you know, and you're actually out there. I mean, that just sounds absolutely lovely. You know, where those stories, the campfire stuff, obviously you don't want, I mean, I wouldn't want any like cameras or anything around at that time to do that, but it's legitimately like the stories from that that can basically inspire the fictional stuff. You know, you can just do it based off of that way. That way, it's not, you don't jeopidize somebody's, you know, experience while doing
it.
Of
course, you keep it private. Yeah,
right,
absolutely. Yeah, it's just funny you mentioned that because that seems to be coming soon for some reason. So yeah, it'll be fun. It's a hero's journey, right? So it's a beautiful thing to be able to get out there and, you know, get some dirt under your nails and some horsehair, get covered in horsehair, and, you know, groom and sleep in bunks and all that, sleep under the stars. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah. And, you know, like, just even the content that could be generated from that. I know I just said I wouldn't want cameras there, but you could have a photographer pretty far away and nobody would know he was there.
Yeah. I mean, as long as the route was
right. You don't want somebody riding past you with a camera on their shoulder. You know, that's going to ruin it. But like, you know, like I'm just thinking about our dad because he's a photographer and he has done plenty of snipers from far away and we didn't know he was there. You know, where you can have that distance, but then you can still generate that content to generate the interest of like, look how cool this was. They're on a hill. You can see the fire. You can see everybody kind of laughing around the fire. And then you can also see the stars and everything. Yeah.
I mean, that would be kind of difficult to get with the camera.
You'd have not the way I'm thinking of it. You'd have to be on a ladder.
No. Talking about exposure.
Oh,
you turn this into like a movie set. It's like the Wild West movie set adventure.
Yeah, no, well, that's, I mean, I'm sure there's some way, shape, or form to do it. But then once again, how that can inspire the fictional writing or the fictional, you know, the actual, you know, if we go out and just shoot a really quick thing to kind of show a dramatization of like what it actually felt like when you guys were out there and having the actual people. It's almost like with those murder mysteries, not to make it sound morbid, but the murder mysteries where they have the reenactment, right, of the people, and then they have the actual interviews with the people that were actually there. Like, we just didn't know he grabbed the knife, and then you see them grab the knife, and it's like, obviously they didn't shoot that. You know, that's a reenactment. So you could do that kind of thing too to get people interested where it's
just
like
not the murder part.
Not the murder part. Unless you want to make it a murder mystery cowboy thing.
Well, I can run a murder mystery. I've done murder mysteries, so I can run them. We could do a murder mystery. You can't do reenactments with horses super well because most animals won't repeat what they did, unlike people. But you can reenact the human parts of it.
There's always 3 actors that go out with you, and nobody knows who they are.
This is becoming a little less of a reset and more of a weird experiential thing.
Right, never mind. Let's roll it back. Let's roll it back.
See, this is what happens when you get away from your core and
core
motive here and murder mystery Cowboy Retreat. That's a different company.
That's a different story world. And if somebody comes up to you and asks you for that, that's a really core principle of transmedia too, is listening to the audience, obviously, and the audience comes up to you and goes like, "We want a murder mystery." It's like, that's great. That's not what I do though. You can go over here. I'm not going to compromise the core of my world to placate you.
This is a reset, not I want some fun. This is a
no, but I mean,
well, one day thing for Halloween. I mean, you could do something.
Sure. Maybe for a Halloween.
Yeah,
but then it doesn't really. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's not. I'm not getting grounded next to a horse. Like, I wonder who killed Jebediah.
No, that would be a detour. It's not really on mission. Not really on mission.
Right.
It's not on brand.
Not on brand.
Right. But I just want to highlight again too about just how like this what we're talking about and all these different forms of content and everything that we're saying, right? And this Hilary already knows this, but we're also doing this for the audience as well that's listening, is that this allows for so many multiple different types of revenue streams to come into a business as well, right? What we're talking about are all things that Hilary's not going to have to do out of her back pocket, right? She's not going to run these retreats and then hope, write it off as like a hope. Oh my goodness, hopefully somebody comes out of it and pays me for my life coaching. These are all revenue streams that can come in that, can help dictate what a successful business in the first place. It's very much a trial and error thing. Like maybe you do a retreat, you get 8 people in, and then, all 8 of them sign up for life coaching. They're like, wow. And every single time that happens, it's constant that more people are interested in life coaching more than the retreat itself, right? Once again, I don't foresee that happening, but it's very possible that it could. It just helps identify exactly what the business should be, right? Mm-hmm. We spend so much time in our own heads as to what our business should be and how people should use us, rather than just allowing them to tell us what our services should be, telling us how our products should perform. Or in an entertainment standpoint, what kind of storytelling they want, right? At the end of the day, we come up with these ideas that should be very loose, I want them to feel something. Right. And so long as they're feeling that, I don't really care how that gets put out there. You tell me what you want, right? Mm-hmm. And so just to kind of drive that home again, because the more that we talk about this, the more evident it becomes of how beneficial this can be. From you enjoying your life, once again, not hitting your head on a wall trying to find clients, because that is the worst.
But also what we had just talked about too was like, it's like yes, listen to the audience, but if it's not what you're doing, then you don't do it. So it's like murder mystery Cowboy Retreat. Is it a story that has horses? Yes, but is it story and horse? No, it's not story and horse. So it's like it's like listen to the audience and tell them what do they want, but also make sure that it's within the parameters that you have set up for your world.
Exactly.
And make sure that it is true to your core, and what the core of the world is to reset nature, be next to horses, get away from the ethereal world of humanity and into the, I don't know if ethereal is the right word there.
I'm not sure either. I'm not sure.
Well, we'll define it loosely, and then get back to the natural world that is animals and
use what you learn in the natural world to reapply back into modern life.
Right.
And what's so interesting about that is like the word life coaching, like I'm only using that as a placeholder really for me for the work that I do, because it's the closest thing that I've been able to find to explain when I work with people what I do. But when I work with my clients, they often tell me like, it's not life coaching. It's more like coaching for life. It's more like, it's something different, but I haven't been able to find the right term for it, because it's more about, it's more about supporting people through these story journeys, right? It's more about how can I help you story your life in a way that is as powerful and effective as possible. And I haven't been able to find a really good noun or verb or definition, but that's also me. That's why I love the people who don't fit into boxes and things, is because for me, it's always kind of like, what should we call you? Here's these, it's always been a little bit difficult to place that on me. And I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm up for suggestions about titling and things too, because people need that. They need to be able to hook on. So that's why I'm using life coaching. But it's really more like what you're saying. It's more about like designing these experiential adventures, whether it's in a 1 hour coaching session or whether it's on a long retreat. It's more about going on this journey together so that I can help you on your journey. So I can help you with your story. So I can help you live in that intersection of embodied spirit storytelling, which is being alive, and really finding joy in that life that you've been given.
Yeah, no, I like what you just kind of summarized it really well there, because it's like the individual sessions, right? Like I like coaching for life. I think that sounds pretty cool. But like the individual sessions are just like the micro, right, and very personalized versions of these longer retreats. And I think that it's like if you went on the retreat and you got a taste of a little bit of honey and you're like, wow, that tastes really good. I would love to have that in my coffee every day. And it was like, well, you can't go on the retreat every day. Would you like to do the personalized stuff? And you're like, yes, please, and that's a perfect, it's a terrible metaphor, but it's a perfect, I was gonna say it's a perfect metaphor. It's not, coffee and honey. I mean, if you always buy honey, but, no, but it's so perfect as a business model, because of, like it's the whole funnel shaped type thing of like a lot of people are going to want to do this retreat, and then a small portion of those people are going to be like, you know what, I really want to continue to do this, but I don't want to continue to do, like, I'll go on the retreat once a year maybe, but I need this on a more consistent basis to allow you to do that. And yeah, so, well, I'm excited for Story and Horse. I'm excited to see where you take this. And all of a sudden it's been an hour and 5, although that's going to look a lot shorter because there was a lot of banter before we started recording. So it's probably around, like, I'm going to say, and let's test it, future Frank, I'm going to say it's 56 right now. So there we go. We'll see if I'm right. But we usually end off with you giving us your best pitch for Story and Horse. So something that, is going to entice people. I think the entire conversation entice people. I say that every single time at the end because, like it does. We tell this amazing story. We get excited about it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But I will stop talking. Your best pitch.
Yeah, so come on over to storyandhorse.com. It's spelled out STORYAND horse, HORSE.com. And you can grab a 15-minute, 20-minute complimentary session with me to talk with me. There's no pressure. Just we get to have a conversation, see if we're a match, and I can get you on a mini journey even during that time. You can also find me on Facebook at Story and Horse. So those are the 2 best ways to reach me.
Excellent. Yeah. And looking forward to, especially with, however you're going to be able to get people to consistently come back to the website for those updates, if that's like a newsletter or if that's like, just having the frequent posts about, educational stuff about horses, and then also the story stuff that you're going to be able to weave into there to get the audience, your target audience's attention, and as a reliable source for this kind of experience. And obviously everything always starts off as a little tiny seed, and this is going to blossom the more that you put into it, the bigger that it's going to get. And so, like I always say at the end of these podcasts, Hilary, you have us at your disposal. So please let us know if you need anything from us, any way that we can help. We will definitely try to help you. And I think the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do an introduction between you and Jonathan, which is yoga at the beach kind of guy, the guy there who has experience doing those types of retreats. And I can't imagine, I feel like he'd be totally down. He is just one of the funnest and coolest guys, and chillest guys. And he would be totally down to do stuff with horses. I'm almost positive of it. So, I'll make that introduction. And hopefully you guys can get something done, together, because that'll be
pretty great.
Cool.
Yeah. And I do have a newsletter. I always forget to tell people to sign up for it because you can get to it through both Facebook and the website. It's a little sporadic, but it goes out, no spam. So please, and then you'll get to know when we have the horse experience ready to go. So you get to sort of be on a VIP list to know when that's launching. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
So thank you.
Gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on with us.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Well, that was another great conversation. The first transmedia story world that's rooted in a business enterprise rather than an entertainment franchise. Really came up with a lot of cool stuff. Really looking forward to that Cowboy Retreat, because that's going to be that's
just
going
not
to be
the mystery one.
Yeah, not the mystery,
not the murder mystery, but the just being under the stars.
Yeah, we're rooting for this story world to come to fruition, and we're looking forward to that first one. Obviously, if they have one and we're able to go, we're going to go and be able to do kind of like a little bit of a vlog and updates, which are coming soon, hopefully, with some of these story worlds that you've already experienced. If you like this content, we have more content, more great story worlds for you to explore. All of them are in the entertainment space at the moment, but more businesses coming soon.